and welcome to the Brand Hunch podcast, where we explore ideas and hunches around how marketers are growing great brands. It's a look under the hood at how much is marketing science and how much is built on a hunch. Today, my two guests are from the well-known and loved carry brand Bellroy. I love that they've developed their own category of carry. If you don't know of them already, Bellroy is an Australian brand from Bells Beach and Fitzroy, hence the name Bellroy, which blew my mind. I had no idea that's where the name came from, that launched in 2010. It's known mainly for its leather goods, from wallets to bags to travel accessories and a whole heap of other cool things. Now doing over $130 million in revenue. I feel like this episode should be sponsored by Tristan Velasco, Cello's co-founder and ECD. He is a loyal Bellroy fan, and to quote him recently, they're the only bags I like. Today I'm joined by Julia Gore, Brand Communications Director, and Tyler House, Head of Marketing, to hear from two sides of the same coin. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
So take me back to the beginning, Julia. I'll start with you. Give me a bit of a snapshot of your career leading up to Bellroy, and what did this teach you at each stage of those roles?
So I've had a bit of a loop-de-loop kind of journey. So I started my career in editorial, so in kind of magazine publishing world, books. I was an editorial writer, an assistant editor of a music magazine, and very much, in print world, which, as we know, has sort of slowly died a bit of a death over the years. So at some point, I moved to London in my sort of mid-20s and found that a bit of a crossroads. It was hard to find a way into the editorial and publishing world over there. And I found myself in an advertising agency, followed by the first main fashion e-commerce brand, Net-a-Porter, which was awesome experience and sort of really set me up for the transition into kind of marketing copy and brand communications, and seeing how creative can be applied to brands and not just to sort of publishing and storytelling in that way. So that was a really great experience. And then when I came back, I sort of still was towing a line between, editorial writing and publishing and brand. But when I joined a copywriting collective just before I started at Bellroy, that sort of upskilled me in really conceptual ideation and creative copywriting, and being able to really play with ideas and words in a way that, you can't do in a long form article, but you can for a headline for a brand or a tagline or a tone of voice. And that really excited me. And then I found my way to Bellroy. That was 9 years ago now. Amazing.
What a journey. It sounds like each sort of stepping stone has been quite pivotal now, bringing all of that kind of consumer product, experience, editorial, and I guess your zest for learning and kind of staying curious around comms and copy all culminates now. What about for you, Tyler? Where did it all begin?
I've always been in retail from the start of my career. I first started out at like a Best Buy or a JB Hi-Fi sort of situation, so it's consumer electronics, and I was doing their email program there. And so that was a lot of email and then eventually e-com, like digital merchandising work. And that's where I started to really get more into data and performance and kind of building out what my SQL skill looked like. And I was just so interested in finding out how things worked and like what was resonating with people, and could I try to figure out what would resonate better. And it was like this constant hunger and curiosity to just try to figure out like how the sausage was made. And eventually, I moved to Sephora, North America, and that was in pure analytics. So I kind of moved out of marketing a little bit. I was in analytics supporting the marketing function. And so I was specifically on Sephora's promotion and loyalty program, which is enormous. Like the sampling program that they drive is just bonkers. We'd see numbers on the spreadsheet and it would be like $25 million. We ran a promotion and it's $100 million. It just was kind of like made up at some point. You look at it and it's disconnected from reality and just thinking, is this real? But I feel like there was really a lot about building my data capability. It was really a lot about Sephora is a very commercially minded company. It's kind of LVMH's cash cow. And so they were super focused on growth and driving performance. And so I think that was kind of like a trial by fire into going after results, thinking about what are the levers that we have available in order to drive the business. And then I moved across the ocean and came to Australia and found Bellroy kind of serendipitously. And they had this CRM role open and I was kind of like unsure about it. I was like, I kind of still want to do analytics, guys. I don't know if I want to move over into more like half marketing. And they were like, no, like we want the analytics piece. And I was like, okay, like we'll see how this goes. And it's the best decision I've ever made. Like I absolutely adore Bellroy. It's been a wonderful almost 6 years that I've been here with them. And I think having kind of more of like a marketing focus and then moving to an analytic focus. And now I really feel like Bellroy has provided the launch pad for me to combine both of those things and really try to expand my perspective. So a little bit of a loop to loop, but I think similar to Jules, this does feel kind of like the culmination of what that journey has been.
And so what did you inherit when you arrived, and what have you built out subsequently over the last 6 years?
Yeah, so when I arrived, I think I came in as a CRM lead. And so I was really focused on the email program. I remember like we do a work test at Bellroy, and I remember sitting in the meeting room with Jules and our chief creative officer, Jimmy, and they were grilling me about email performance. I was so nervous. And so when I came into Bellroy, it was really that you've done email before. We really want you to take this program, think about how we can scale it. And so we kind of over the years really endeavored to do that. And so that was increasing email frequency, thinking more about performance and the different campaigns that are working, what is resonating with our customers, doing more personalization at scale, generating more email flows, and tons of A/B testing along the way. So really using a lot of that data foundation to help drive what that program looked like. And eventually through my growth at Bellroy kind of expanded beyond email into e-commerce and more like omni-channel customer journey, and now into my role as head of marketing.
I was doing some research prior to the podcast, and I was reading that the A/B testing and the approach to research is really embedded from the founders down throughout the business. It's sort of a way of working. Do you think your role could succeed in a business where it's not as embedded? How important has that been to your own department's success?
Yeah, I think everybody from as Bellroy staff feels very interested in A/B testing. I think everybody, regardless of data capability, is very interested in learning about data and the insights that are coming from it. And so I think that environment has been really crucial at being able to move quite quickly with it because everyone's on board with what the program of work looks like. I think it could probably happen in another business, but it would be a lot more of a roadshow, I think, to convince about here's the plan and here's the results that we can get and here's what operationally that looks like. So it's great to come into a business. I remember like one of the first things I spoke about was running A/B tests as multi-armed bandits. This is like a stitch fix kind of testing strategy. And as soon as I said that, Matt, one of the co-founders, it was like his eyes lit up. He was like, oh, you know about multi-armed bandits? Like we should talk more about this. So there's definitely been support from the get-go.
You found your people.
100%.
And so, Julia, over to you. You're obviously now in a brand communications director role, but what did you join the business to do and how has your role evolved over the years?
Yeah, so I joined as the storyteller, which at that time I think was the third, maybe fourth member of the creative team, sole copywriter role. And when I started, the brand was in a slightly awkward stage, I guess, in terms of brand personality and tone. They'd come from a surf coast beginning. There was a bit of surf speak. It was a bit masculine, casual. And then the pendulum was swinging towards, we want to be a serious design brand. We want to be taken seriously. Or some of our main markets are emerging outside of Australia where sort of Victorian coast surf speak may not resonate as strongly. And so I think that pendulum swing then went to an overcorrection. So when I joined, it was about balancing that and bringing a bit more of, stability to the kind of personality and the tone, humanizing it a little bit. We still joke about the effort that it took me to get eyeballs in our Instagram feed for the first time. And even then it was with a dog and not a human. It took us a while to sort of evolve there because we were a wallet brand. We only had wallets at that time when I joined. So I've watched it, sort of diversify in terms of product, but also in personality and really grow up and mature and find its equilibrium in that way. We now have a much larger creative team and other copywriters that, help put all of that storytelling out into the world. So it went from me writing pretty much every word that the business put out, including a lot of our internal comms, our job ads, our conference invites. It helped me really get such an understanding of the brand's philosophies in every corner of the business at that point and sort of tie them all together in what that looks like in how we show up in the world.
How attached or detached is the brand from the founder's brand? And is that something that you've helped evolve, being, I guess, one point removed from the founders in terms of the brand journey? Is it important to keep the flavour of the founders, or does a brand get to a point where it actually needs to stand on its own 2 feet as a consumer-facing brand?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think a good example of this that I sometimes think about is Apple and Steve Jobs, and how much of Apple at that time was tied to who Steve Jobs was as a person and what he valued and what he cared about and what he wanted to strive for personally. And once he was gone, then those foundations were also gone a little bit. Apple's still obviously an incredibly successful company, but in terms of that brand, you could tell it was tied so deeply to Steve Jobs himself. And I think I've always been aware of that. And I don't think that we've had that problem at Bellroy. I think our founders their values are definitely incredibly aligned and embedded in the brand, but the brand is its own entity. And I think they are able to see what is right and good for the business and for the brand that is likely going to be also really aligned with what they care about and what they're passionate about, because that's, it's hard to abandon that, and you don't want them to abandon that. But they look at it through a business and a brand lens, super personal one, but they know what they value for Bellroy, and it can stand alone in that respect.
Amazing. There was something I read on your job listing page on your site. I assume, Julia, you at some point may have read this, but it says at the top, rational yet playful, practical while progressive, Bellroy is a unique blend of art and science. What does that mean to both of you in your roles, and more specifically in a marketing context?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like in my career journey, that's very much how I've tried to position myself, as this blend of art and science. And I think that is a lot of what we're all doing here. It's this balance between like data and instinct, and what we kind of call system 1 and system 2 thinking, where we want the data, we want to have the foundational analysis to also understand the thing. But I think we also really want to leverage all of the humans that we have here and their expertise and the experiences that they've had that are leading them to have these viewpoints and these instincts that are really quite valuable and powerful. And so I think if you go too much in one direction, it's probably going to be a bad result. Like, you don't want to be disconnected from performance, and you also don't want to be like so laser focused you missed out on maybe all of the softer good feels stuff. So, and especially in marketing, like that's very much what it feels like, of the science piece of how are we going to scale ads and the strategy of, optimizing for contribution or something. But then there's also the art of how are you going to structure the campaigns, and what is the creative going to do, and what audience is that going to reach. So I think what Jules wrote is great, and it clearly it ages quite well.
And I think it's really indicative of Bellroy's, the multifaceted nature of everything we do. Like, there is, and a particular challenge that I have felt over my time here in terms of communicating those brand stories is that it is never the simplest or single-minded kind of decision or approach. There's always a Venn diagram, and we're always striving to be in the middle of that Venn diagram. So there is always a balance of, two different pieces that make the end result more valuable. And that makes our jobs a little more challenging. I think it makes the end result also more valuable. But there are many, many kind of this and that, or that without sacrificing the other, or the combination of form and function, art and science. It's always a Venn diagram here. And it's never a single-minded
in
piece,
isolation.
Really. Yeah.
Tyler, tell me a bit more about the system 1 and system 2 thinking, how you relate to that.
The system 1 and system 2 thinking, I'm probably going to butcher, and so I'll do my best, and maybe Jules can help nudge me in the right direction. System 1 is like the term that we use internally to be like, I'm hearing the feedback, and my system 1, my gut is telling me this thing that I'm now expressing. System 2 thinking is usually more of, I've kind of sat down, I've had time to reflect on it, maybe I've done a little bit of analysis and I've pulled the numbers, and now I have a different formed idea. And we play with that a lot, and you'll hear it used internally of, well, my system 1 is, and then we'll say something. And it kind of gives you like a calibration point to say, I'm saying this thing and I don't know how real it is, but I feel like the experience I've had is letting me think that this is something real. And then there's that system 2 piece, which is maybe where it takes from instinct over into, let me put this into application and kind of verify what my system 1 was. And And that's very much this art and science of, I feel this thing, I think that this is something we should explore, and now I want to validate it and verify it. One of the other things that Jules has written is in our brand atlas about seeking different perspectives. And I think about that all the time because it also feels very system one and system two of, we're actually trying to look at the thing, but from all around it, from the full 360-degree perspective. And if we're only looking at it from one way, there's probably a huge amount of opportunity that we're missing out on. So having like a team of really excellent people across the business and kind of having this ability to have initial gut feel and then being able to also verify and validate has been a really important tool, I think, for all of the business as it's grown.
Amazing. Tell me, Julia, a brand atlas. What on earth is that? No pun intended.
Yeah, it is. How do I describe the brand atlas? It really is our attempt at mapping all of the things that we might hold in our system one, to reference that. We might have heard in passing, picked up in meetings, really had deep conversations about, but that's been in our room of, maybe senior management or certain people, things that are really important to the brand. It's our purpose, it's our values, it's trying to make explicit the things that we understand to be really core to how the brand operates, so that as we grow, not everyone can be in those conversations anymore. The business has just outgrown that. We're not all sitting around the lunch table talking about what the brand is here to do and maybe what we care most about or why one approach is better than another for Bellroy. So it's really our attempt to get it onto paper and pass sort of those learnings, I guess, and those calibration pieces about the brand onto all parts of the business. It's really our guiding, call it our North Star. It's like, what is the brand here to do in really simple, hopefully simple to understand terms, so that everyone's pulling in the same direction. We know we have examples of what feels on brand versus not, or what's like true to our values versus maybe not true to our values. And it's aimed to just help decision making in different parts of the business. Someone who's maybe not in a boardroom style meeting can actually then apply similar level of calibration and thinking to a decision that they might be working on in their corner of the office.
So how does it differ from a standard brand strategy or a brand, a strategic deck or sort of about us?
It tended to be maybe a little more robust than, I think brand strategy can change and morph and shift over time, and probably should. Honestly, it should be keeping up with what the world is doing, what people are resonating with, whereas the brand atlas for us is meant to be a little more timeless in that it's like the core of the brand and the business and what it aims to do, that's not shifting with the world or evolving with the world as a strategy might. It's taking less inputs and less outputs. So my favorite part, I'm such a values-based person, and I think the brand values that we've found years ago still hold really true, and that's the point. They should really hold true. Endure, exactly. They feel very helpful for making sure the things we're doing are pulling in the right direction for our overarching purpose. And we have now an overarching purpose statement that we haven't had before. And I think values and the proof points to those values, like we can show in just a bullet point list that we're actually living out these really cool values in a really tangible way on a daily basis. And that just helps to validate everything we're doing, I think.
Thank you. Carly, you mentioned before about a culture of A/B testing and almost sort of letting the data talk for itself. How much of your marketing headspace do you give to totally left of center ideas and just giving something completely wild and new a go versus incremental optimization?
Yeah, it's I think a constant tension in every business that I've been in. There's always that hunger for like immediate results and I think quick wins. And those are important, but I think it's really important to stay curious. Like that's one of the things I've learned throughout is that you should constantly be challenging your preconceived notions that you might have, and being very sure or very confident of something often means that you're going to miss opportunity as well. So again, I work with this incredible team of people, and I think we're all super open to hearing ideas and trying new things. And also noticing that, we talk about the incremental testing thing a bit. And the way that we describe it is if you're incrementally testing, you're kind of going up the mountain. And at some point, you're going to reach the top of the mountain. And of course, you don't know when that is. Like everything in retrospect, you'll know. But in order to, maybe the mountain is always yay high. And if you actually want to push to the next level of growth, you actually need to move mountains, and you're not going to get there by incrementally testing. So we could keep A/B testing on a product page until the cows come home, but maybe we actually do need to kind of take a big swing and think about, actually, we just kind of need to redo the entire template, and the customer that we had that we were serving with the products that we were selling at the time, this template no longer serves, and we can't just kind of keep rearranging content. We need to do a complete refresh and see if that's going to get us to the mountain that we want to be on, or is it a new base that opens up more capability for additional incremental testing? If there's a page that only has 5 things on it, I can only test those 5 things so much. If I move to a new world and a new template where maybe there's 20 different things that I can start to play with, then, well, now I'm really pushing buttons and pulling levers. There's a lot more opportunity to have a go at.
Tell me a bit about your marketing team structure, and how have you guys, I believe you work really closely with your executive creative director internally. How have you fostered that? How have you fostered a great working relationship? What has worked for you guys?
Yeah, we've also been on a little bit of a journey. I think at the end of last year, maybe I can start from the beginning. When I joined Bellroy, there was 5 of us on what was then called a digital sales team. And I think traditionally, as Jules kind of hinted at, like in the early days of the business, everyone was wearing a lot of hats, and we would get around the table and talk about, the direction for things. It was easier to kind of share ideas. And I think as a result, creative also traditionally held a lot of marketing responsibility, or what would be considered a traditional marketing responsibility. And as the business continued to grow, I think that just became more challenging for the individual teams to manage, of creative actually finding the space for the brainstorming and development and the production, and marketing also having this desire to like push and distribute more and really expand reach. So from those 5 people, we became 16 people today. And at the end of last year, kind of had a rebrand from digital sales to marketing. And as part of that, amongst those 16 people, we've broken it out into 5 functions. So there's an e-commerce marketing team, there's a brand marketing team, there's a paid marketing team, we have a customer lifecycle management, and then a customer support function lives under marketing, because we view it as like, we are the team that is advocating for the customer in the business. I think everybody does do this, but that really we are the people that are on the front lines of that connection and the relationship and doing a lot of that interaction. And so we want to make sure that even in a customer support, we're using things like the brand atlas to guide what those conversations can look like, and using that as kind of a brand opportunity instead of maybe what's traditionally been just a support or service function.
Amazing. And Julia, over to you. How do you foster that great working relationship amongst kind of department heads? I assume it's underpinned by trust and, but how have you gotten to that point, and what's worked for you guys?
Yeah. Luckily, we work with some very capable and smart people, so it's easier to trust people to do excellent work when you know just how brilliant they are at what they do. And that in part is down to we have a pretty long and robust recruitment process. I won't go into that now, but I think once people are in the business, that they can do the job they've been hired to do. So there is generally a lot of mutual trust in the culture. We are highly capable of doing the things that we're hired to do. So that helps. And been in the business for 9 years. Tyler's been here a long time as well. And there are people who, we've kind of grown and found our places in the business kind of alongside each other, found that collaboration or how we best work and intertwine with the same people. So that feels really helpful. And along the way, I think creative and marketing, it's been a bit of a morphing shape. It was one and the same at one point. Now they're kind of separating because, the business has grown to a point where it needs to have those really clear functions. And I think that feels quite liberating for a creative team that's hold a lot of that just by the nature of it. We used to create the briefs ourselves, essentially. Not that we ever actually wrote a brief, but, internally we would create the brief ourselves, figure out what we wanted to create, how we were going to create it, what it was going to do, all of that stuff. So now having a team of people that I have worked with already for a long time and know what they can do and how they can give us the information and the insights and the data and everything that is so valuable to us as creatives that we don't have to hunt for anymore, just feels really, really great.
And how did you go about creating the category that you call carry now? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I don't know if you know, but Carryology started first. So our founders founded Carry blog called Carryology about a year before Bellroy. And that really was the moment when they defined sort of carry as a noun and as a category. And that website and community was started to learn from people who really had an interest in bags and carry in general and might have been frustrated with what was out there at the time. And it still is really engaging and engaged community of kind of carry geeks, we call them lovingly. So that started first, and that was really, I guess, the flag in the sand to say, hey, this is a thing that people care about. It's also a whole category that isn't just backpacks and it isn't just suitcases. It's like we carry so many things in our day and they all have similar challenges. We want them to all be easy to carry and not super bulky and like not weigh us down or hold us back or make it harder to get on a train. So there was commonalities between all of the categories that we now have in our range, and it didn't have a name at the time. So that's when we decided to give it one.
You've been with the business 9 years. I'd love to know which came first, new product development or the brand building that people bought into or, customers bought into? Because I know you mentioned before you started in men's wallets. I can't imagine, I'm assuming your products are well made, so people are not repeat purchasing these often unless for gifts. And then also, the sort of audience type, I'm being stereotypical here, but just in terms of their propensity to purchase from you, multiple times in a year or over a period of time. How did you approach that as its own sort of challenge, and at what stage did you invest in brand?
We definitely started as a product business, and I think we've been on a journey to brand since then. So I think it was very focused on product. Product is still such a huge focus for us because we want the products have to be good for the brand to exist, and they have to be valuable and long lasting and well made, and they have to solve problems. Like that is all part of what we're here to do. So product is key and core to everything else. And it is still, when we put the brand into the world, the product has to be the main character. And we still see that, yes, we're bringing kind of human-led stories into the fold, but people still want our product as the main character. We see that in our top performing creative over and over again. So it's very clear that people know and love us for the things we design and make. But I think we've just been building, like colouring in, I guess, around that ever since. When we were selling wallets, we were in people's pockets. Like we weren't even visible on the street. People didn't even necessarily know that it was a Bellroy. They just knew that it was a really good wallet that they liked and they'd found on a website. And you'd say, I work at Bellroy, and they might pull their wallet out and be like, oh, what is this? What is this? Is this one? And you'd see the owl and you'd be like, yeah, that's a Bellroy. They bought it for what the product gave them and not necessarily what the brand was. And I think that's definitely shifted while maintaining product as kind of the hero of the story. But people know us now for so much more than that.
And so how much of the growth of the business has been following customers and their need versus putting in front of them things they don't know that they yet need?
I think maybe the safe answer is that it is a little bit of both. And the thing that I would reach for, and what Andy, one of our co-founders, says all the time, is that a great business is insight-led and consumer-informed. And so I think when we have this idea of developing new products, like we have feedback loops in place so that we can say, here's what people are saying about the backpack straps that we're using, or here's what they're saying about this feature that we've put in. And I think we want to take that feedback on board and really understand how is the customer experiencing the product? Is it landing how we wanted? But we also have these incredible product designers who have so much experience and expertise that they can use that information, but they also have an idea about, oh, this is a feature that nobody else is doing and that we've, trialed and is working really well. And that is kind of the magic of it. Like, I think if we made only products that that people asked for or were like, I want these features. Part of the magic of Bellroy is getting the product for the first time and starting to use it. And you have these little aha moments of, oh, that's why that pocket's there. And, oh, I can just put my keys right here and there's this little loop. Or, oh, that pocket pops open and my water bottle fits in it. Like that part of the discovery of it's kind of building a relationship with your product. It feels like a bit cheesy to say, but the products do last a long time. We're very different from a fast moving consumer goods brand. And I think part of the brand of Bellroy is that relationship you build with the product. And some of the stories we have of, somebody was skiing and kind of took a tumble and their ski went through their pocket and their wallet saved them from being stabbed in the butt with it. And it's like these stories that kind of stay with them. And it's, oh, I have my product and I remember all of these memories, the nostalgia that I feel with it, and those aha moments that you have, or when you're traveling, the thing just works. Like that's kind of the magic of it all, the je ne sais quoi, that makes it feel really special.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah.
To add to that, we're also looking at what is happening in the world and what people might need from products. So, and a good example of that was when COVID lockdowns hit. We were about to actually launch a travel campaign of travel bags and backpacks. And that was obviously just not going to be the thing that anyone needed at that time. And we quickly pivoted to slings and crossbodies and desk accessories. So people were working where they weren't used to working, maybe going between places, houses, dining table to study, whatever. And they were also going on short neighborhood walks. So it was like, what did they need at that time that maybe they didn't realize they needed at that time? And how could we solve for the problems that were really new problems? So no one really had a good standing necessarily of what the challenges were or what the solutions might be. And we designed for that. And slings and crossbodies now are one of our leading categories. I think that was a real catalyst for it. And it was a real moment to solve the need that I don't think anyone quite understood in full at that time.
Incredible. And just amazing that you've got not just the foresight and the common sense, I guess, for application of your products in everyday life, but also the ability to move quickly, adapt, sort of bring that to life. I think it's very different having the thought and then the action itself. One of the things our team really loves about your marketing work specifically is your stop motion work. And I assume you've done them in-house. How did that come about in terms of the idea and doubling down on what are really great quality video pieces? And how do you know when something's a right fit for you as a brand, as an aesthetic or as an approach?
Honestly, it was a bit of an experiment. And it started, so we did our first stop motion before I started at Bellroy. And looking back on that now it's pretty hilarious to look at. We call somewhere. Exactly. And we call that video slug money because it was basically some cash was like slugging along a desk with a wallet. And really it started because we had a photographer, an in-house photographer who's still with us in the creative team today and really great at taking photos, but we didn't have video capability. And at that time we're a small leather goods brand that again is in people's pockets or in people's hands. You're not sort of there seeing humans with it in the world. So video need was probably less at that time. And it was a way for us to get motion without any new equipment or capability because, stop motions are made entirely from stills. So we had a photography capability in-house and we just used that in a slightly different way and evolved it and refined it over time and over years through really that deliberate practice, so much tinkering and kind of engineering thinking to figure out how to make raindrops out of blue tack and wire. Yeah, creative problem solving really just as an experiment of what else can we do with a photography capability that we had in-house. How can we make it into some movement?
How do you know, Tyler, when an aesthetic or a piece of work is right for you as a brand?
I think it is maybe building off what Julia said, this kind of constant experimentation that's needed, especially in a lot of today's digital marketing world, I think is unfortunately like trying to fuel the algorithm and having it go out and find people. And so for us, it's still that same flavor of experimentation that we want we have kind of the brand North Star. We know the values that we want to express. The brand is trying to respond to what's happening in the world right now. And we kind of have ideas about what that's going to look like, but actually need to put it into market to find out. And stop motion is like maybe one example of that, we were doing creative problem solving like way before my time. And I think we're still endeavoring to do more of that today.
Tyler, tell me a bit about your journey understanding and knowing your customers really well. Like, have you always felt really in tune with your customers? Have your customer set changed? Has your perspective on customers changed? Tell me a bit about that.
It's definitely evolved, I think, especially just from who is connected to Bellroy and who's engaging with the brand. As mainly a men's slim wallet brand, that was the type of customer we were speaking to. And Jules kind of hinted at that with a little bit of the Surf Coast talk that was built into the early days. And we were very much predominantly male, predominantly like 25 to 35 to 40, I would say. And that was the core demo of Bellroy. And as that product maturity kind of evolved, and we went from wallets to having phone cases to accessories and now to a really robust bag program, there's also been a lot of intention behind that. And it is very much this Venn diagram piece of, we actually don't want to speak only to people that would buy men's wallets. Some of them would be women who are buying them as gifts, but we're really interested in taking different perspectives and connecting with a huge variety of different humans. And I think a lot of that is expressed through our marketing kind of creative, but also through the products that we're designing. So there's really technical bags for the carry geeks that are part of Carryology. We also have products that are maybe better suited at a price point for somebody who's going to university, or maybe somebody who just graduated that has their first job and really wants to make a professional impression, or the around the town type of person. And so I think we also think about it in these different worlds of, as Carry, we really want to stay in that kind of niche of not being put in a box of you're a travel brand, or you make work products, or you only make bags for around town. We really want to have a huge variety of products to help people solve problems that they have as they're moving through life and make it more seamless. And just by nature of building this, multi-circle overlapping Venn diagram, the audience has changed a lot too. So from when I first started, we've definitely attracted more of a female audience. We've expanded that 25 to 34 to be both younger and older. My parents are 70 now, and my mom is hassling me. She gets our Bellroy emails and she's like, oh, that's new. What should I get that one? How does that compare to the bag I have now? He absolutely loves it. So I think it's really important to stay aware of how you're making business changes and how that's affecting who's engaging with your brand, but still kind of remaining true to your core values.
Julia, when you think about storytelling across the business, how do you know which stories are relevant and when to share them?
So I think this is where the collaboration between marketing and creative is really valuable. For me, it starts with finding the thing that people want to talk about or that they care about, which are often not the same things that you might want to talk about or care about. And so getting those insights or those starter points fed in is really helpful. But also I just go out and, I'll social media stalk people, or I'll eavesdrop on conversations. I'll read comment threads to see what are the patterns that are showing up and how can we tap into those patterns if we have an offering that actually responds to the thing that people are caring about. So one example of that was how much organization kept coming up for us. It's the least sexy thing to have to talk about as a creative, but I just couldn't ignore it. It was in our comment threads. It was in the videos that people were responding to. It was in the word clouds that we were getting back from, community surveys that we would send out. It was just popping up consistently across the board. And we sort of tried to not ignore it, but get around it, because it was organization's not fun or it's not exciting. But really in the end, I was it just keeps coming back to that. And that is something that seems super true to what our customers value in what we give them. So let's actually just lean in. And we found then we worked on different ways to sort of tell an organization story without it feeling heavy or boring. And so some examples of that are the flat lays that we have across social where they feel really satisfying and they're still coming through in a creative or design-based way. We've done workday flowcharts to our email audience and packing videos, get millions of views. So finding ways to kind of talk to the thing that they clearly care about in different ways that doesn't make us feel like we're drilling holes into our eyeballs with a pen.
It sounds like you've done a whole lot of work from a copy, tone, and sort of who you are perspective in terms of codifying and giving access to whole of business or whole of community around what you stand for. How do you keep that consistency but don't fall into the trap of sameness, specifically from a copy and a words perspective? How do you stay fresh?
Yeah, I think tone of voice, people people might think that it needs to be like a style guide, you know, like super consistent and regular and the same, using the same words to feel like the same brand. But I actually just think it's more about identifying the values and the kind of personality traits of that brand and then being able to adapt them to suit. Like we as people will show up differently situation to situation or month to month, year to year as we grow, as we evolve, as we have different moods, as we're in a party versus a professional setting. And so first understanding the brand's personality so that you can just adapt it, do something different without ever departing from the core of the brand, I think is really helpful. I mean, we even adapt our tone of voice between our product ranges. So we have different ranges that we've kind of identified for different types of customer and what they value differently. You know, if someone's looking at our venture range, we think that they value kind of function and performance more than, say, if someone's looking at our Essential Laneway range, which are a little less kind of organization and function and performance centric. So I'll dial up some technical language for one range when I know that that customer set, that's what they're looking at that range for. I might dial up the playfulness for another one. So knowing the core personality of the brand, but knowing how you can then dial things up or down as you need to, I think is a helpful tool to be creative without ever departing from what feels right or true or authentic for a brand.
And when you're hiring in your teams, I personally think that copy is such an underrated and highly beneficial component of agency or brand. I think good, succinct and considered copy can take you miles. How do you hire for people in your team? What attributes are important? Obviously, there's a baseline of being good with words, but above and beyond that, what's important to you?
Yeah, it depends, I think is the answer. It depends who we're looking for and what their function will be in terms of, I think copywriters can span so many different functions from conceptual ideation, kind of those lofty big ideas like campaign work, right down to really technical UX copy or product copy that has to really understand design and how to communicate that, interpret that, to communicate that simply. So I think there are kind of technical experts, but then there's also like conceptual visionaries, if you like who can set a vision and paint a picture and then allow the other creatives to interpret that and execute that in their own ways, versus people who are really good at interpreting information and kind of spitting that out the other side in really simple terms where it's just the critical information that will help something understand a thing in the least words possible.
Tyler, when you look back at your last 6 years at Bellroy, what's been a standout moment for you or a highlight for you in your role?
I think we've done a lot of work at taking customer feedback and kind of operationalizing that. And I've really loved that part. I think coming from a more traditional analytics role that is very by the numbers, like how are we going to use statistics in order to identify this and look at variance or whatever it might be. I really loved the ability to kind of take customer feedback and feel much more of a connection to the real world than just numbers on a spreadsheet. And I think it's so important as well that you are able to ground yourself into the reality of what is happening in the world. So being able to have customer feedback and kind of aggregate that and share it back with the rest of the business, like everybody is so hungry for those insights and so hungry for that information. It really does feel kind of incredible to be able to be that conduit in the business. And to be able to visualize it, I think is also like we very much value building connection and relationships here, both like internally with each other, with our customers, with our other brand partners. And I think being able to have that feedback and think about, somebody came to the website, they added something to cart, they clicked checkout. When that happens, somebody is in a warehouse and they're picking this bag and they're putting it in a box. And now there's maybe 100 boxes that are stacked up and somebody is now taking those boxes and putting them in a van. And eventually it's getting to their doorstep. Like there's all of these things that have to happen for it to reach the customer in a really good way. And I think that feedback, connecting to the data we're seeing, connecting to the brand experience is like forming this really neat triangle of forming this 360-degree view. Like we are not just relying on one indicator, we're really trying to deeply understand what is going on and our customers' experience so that we can meet them where they are and we can help them do good in the world.
Amazing. Last question, Julia, who do you think does brand building really well? Who do you look at and think they are just killing it?
I have a couple of like brand crushes, I guess, because, killing it, I don't know how we want to measure that. But for me, from my kind of brand brand perspective, I really have always loved Go-To skincare. Obviously, as a brand built on tone of voice and founded by a writer, like that is my happy place, I guess, reading the bottles, and every touch point there is not a single touch point that they haven't thought about the words for. So that's always fun to see. Patagonia as an example of a brand whose purpose just seeps out of every pore and everything that they do, and the kind of consistency with which they hold true to and strong to that purpose. And On Running, sound like a broken record at the moment with On Running around here, because I just love how they are able to communicate kind of capability and performance, but no matter what your level of understanding of running shoes or running in general, they can turn a product page into a moment for education, and you can walk away with something whether you buy the shoe or not. So On Running's a good one for me as well.
Any from you, Tyler?
Yeah, I would say maybe also brand crushes. Intrepid Travel, I think, is doing an incredible job at marketing. Like, truly, the brand awareness that they've been able to raise in a matter of short years should be studied.
They were just on the last podcast episode. So yeah, we can study them closely.
That kind of like mix that they have between both brand and performance, I think, is really interesting as somebody who's doing both of them really well. I also really like Gelato Messina. I think that their social game is just exquisite. It's like, it's fun, it's playful, there's a really good balance of content, the voice is so strong, they have like this mystery behind it of Mr. Messina is the person who manages the account. There's just a lot of intrigue.
Also, Tyler loves a sweet treat, so that doesn't surprise me.
I love a sweet treat. And Hakel's, which is now I think known as It's About All of Us, but they're a UK skincare brand, and they're also a fellow B Corp company. For me, what they're doing really well is expressing brand value, like Patagonia. Like, you can see it in all of the packaging that they do on their website, in their retail stores. It's just the most clear through line through all of it that you can look at it and go immediately, I know exactly who you are. I know exactly what you stand for. Great stuff coming out of them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Last fun fact, I don't know if you know this, but Breville, the coffee machine brand, they are also a same sort of name structure. They were started by Brett and Neville, and they became Breville. Don't know if you knew that, but now you do.
Did not know that. That's great. Also, just that it's Brett and Neville. Awesome.
So Australian. Thank you so much for your time, guys. This has been a really great chat.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
My biggest takeaway, apart from the fact that they definitely had a lot of respect for each other, was this idea of thinking fast and slow, the system 1, system 2 thinking, which I'd forgotten about until we talked about it. Some things are intuitive, other things take some slow down time to think through. And, you know, in ad agency land, we used to have this sort of copywriter and designer combo. And maybe these days those combos look a little bit different, and perhaps they are somebody in the words and creative land and somebody else in data. So really loved hearing two sides of the same coin.